From the project leader and lead writer of Left 4 Dead comes Left 4 Dead in Space, aka the Anacrusis, a 4-player co-op shooter steeped in a funky 70s sci-fi style. Launching for early access on January 13th, the Anacrusis aims to inject some life and color into an otherwise stagnant squad-based shooter subgenre that, like we wary Omicron warriors, just can't seem to escape the post-apocalypse. So, is the Anacrusis the vaccine for everyone's problems? Let's put it under the meg of the microscope and find out. We'll start with story, a metric I break into plot, characters, and dialogue. Narratively thin, the Anacrusis follows in Left 4 Dead's bloody footsteps by dishing out lore via environmental storytelling and character banter, rather than through a more traditional, cutscene-driven plot. Thus, with story detail so sparse, all I can really report here is that you're one of 4 survivors aboard a luxury space barge that's been overrun by headcrabs, the Half-Life alien, not the STD, and their bigger, nastier friends. Somewhere along the way, you'll probably save the world, hard to say, given that only the first 3 of the game's at least 5 episodes are currently playable. So, as the Anacrusis' plot and characters are unlikely to impact your overall experience at this point, I'll leave these micrometrics unscored, meaning they won't impact the game's final megascore. Dialogue, however, is here in droves, should you choose to play with bots, but it's fairly uninspired stuff.
I have no idea what to expect when these doors open, but let's get ready.
I gather that Stray Bombay was going for a fun, fast and loose kind of disco vibe, but the relentlessly flippant, excitable tone struck by what should be your utterly terrified party of civilians aboard this alien death ship struck me as a bit odd.
Do you look out the window?
Yeah, sure. It looks bad, but what if we just dodge and weave?
On to gameplay, the real reason you're here. Alas, it probably won't be why you stay, as the Anacrusis' combat feels fairly dated and isn't mechanically far off from what we saw from Left 4 Dead in 2008. You know, spawn, select from a limited assortment of weapons, and then cull your way through waves of space zombies en route to the next safe room. Repeat. Piggybacking on the past here would have been fine were the combat inventive, but it's very much standard squad-based shooter fare, currently lacking any real wow factor. Now, to be fair, the game's procedural perk system, delivered via matter collectors scattered about the Anacrusis' levels, can shake up playstyle a bit, maybe encouraging you to prioritize headshots, for example, or buff your rechargeable enemy-repelling force field and turn you into more of a frontline bruiser. But while pumping plasma into impending enemy hordes can elicit a sense of frantic fun, the entire experience trends toward repetitive a few hours in. And that's with the game's skill-dependent difficulty scaling, which in my opinion currently skews too difficult. Really, I had certain areas so booby-trapped that you could have called this ship the Penelope Crucis, but certain hordes would still rip right through me, regardless of prep time. Add in a sprinkling of game-breaking bugs like stuck NPCs or broken elevators, and I'm forced to call the Anacrusis' current playability disappointing. With nothing much to say about the game's straightforward UI, let's turn to content. Now, critical to any horde shooter is the enemy design and variety, something I account for in the world micrometric. Here, in addition to headcrabs, you'll face a variety of, quote, special enemies, each with a moniker more self-explanatory than the last. There's the Grabber, who's still living in a pre-Me Too world, the Flasher, whose solar flares would make Krillin blush, the Spawner, who sits in the very back of the map and will spawn ads until you politely ask him to stop. There's the Tank, Brute, and the Goober, who locks you in place with his Go until your allies shoot the Go off of you, and dear Goo God, am I going to plasma pistol whip the next person who says Goo.
I'm Goo! Watch out for Goo! Goo!
I already touched on the Anacrusis' disappointingly repetitive objectives, and at $30 I'm pretty neutral on its overall value, so let's just conclude with a few words on style. To me, this is where the Anacrusis has the best chance of standing out from the crowd. Well, that and the game's emphasis on community modding. As for art design, bright, bold colors dominate the Anacrusis, providing a welcome antidote to its gloomy peers. Most enemy and environmental textures here look pretty slick too, though the unit animations are choppy, and the physics-defying ragdoll deaths shatter immersion. Need some work. As for music and sound, I haven't yet heard quite enough to bump either up from Neutral 3 Purgatory, but there's solid atmosphere here, and I think it's safe to say that the game's style is trending in the right direction. And so, the Anacrusis earns the following metric scores, along with a final aggregate megascore of 2.82 out of 5. With an estimated 12 months of early access ahead, the Anacrusis could turn into a fine title by final launch, but I'm not quite ready to recommend it. Until then, this is Scope, wishing you a
Merry New Year!